Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to At Home Health Part 2, Pro Moves, Pro Food, Pro Perspective. Expert tips for maintaining health, wellness, and peak performance during uncertain times. My name is Dr. Kelly Heim, and I'll be your host for this 45-minute panel discussion with sponsored USA BMX cyclist Elise Willoughby and Director of Performance Science with the Pittsburgh Pirates, Brendan Huttman. Elise Willoughby is a pro BMX cyclist, a two-time Olympian, two-time world champion, 2016 Rio silver medalist, and eight-time women's pro champion, as well as a nine-time USA cycling national champion and sponsored clean athlete. I'm also joined today by Brendan Huttman. He's currently the Director of Performance Science with the Pittsburgh Pirates. He's a certified strength and conditioning specialist with distinction and registered strength and conditioning coach with distinction through the National Strength and Conditioning Association. His honors and awards include a previous tenure as president of the Professional Baseball Strength and Conditioning Coaches Society from 2015 to 2017, as well as the 2014 PBS CCS Strength Coach of the Year. For those of you who don't know me, I am a pharmacologist by training and senior director of scientific affairs for Clean Athlete. I'm also a Pro Masters bodybuilder in the American Natural Bodybuilding Federation. I encourage you to send questions and we'll get to them in a short Q&A session following the panel discussion. And if we run out of time, we'll follow up with you through email afterwards. If you want to submit a question, go to the GoToWebinar toolbar on the right-hand side of your screen under the questions drop-down box. All right, so I will continue with just a few words about Clean Athlete's mission, fueling foundational health, peak performance, and athletes who demand the most from themselves, their sport, and their nutrition. And professional athletes, for them, it's especially true, as health and wellness are the critical building blocks supporting performance at the highest level on the field, on the ice, in the gym, wherever the sport takes them. And structure and routine is everything for the pros. But when the unexpected happens, suddenly everything we knew and depended on becomes really uncertain. And as athletes, we have to adapt. And here at Clean, we work with some of the world's top athletes, coaches, and trainers who trust us with one of their most important assets, and that's their health. So during times like the present, both physical and mental health is more important than ever before. And building upon our panel discussion from early April, which focused on nutrition and hygiene and in-home training and recovery, we're honored to have Elise and Brennan here with us today, who each bring unique perspectives and knowledge from within the professional sports realm to the topic of training for peak performance when competition is suddenly put on hold and we're required to socially isolate, be away from our teammates and our coaches and our training facilities. So my two guests today will speak from personal experience. They'll share their tips, their tricks, and offer a peek behind the curtain to share with you what it's like for an Olympic athlete and a world-class strength conditioning coach during these trying times and how they're preparing for success in the weeks to come, perhaps even drawing some positive learnings and experience from what we're all going through together. So let's start with you, Brendan. Let's talk about spring training. It just started. Players and coaches have descended upon camp and spirits were high. The atmosphere was positive. It's always the start of a brand new season. The environment is exciting, but then the news broke that spring training was canceled. Players were sent home and the season would be postponed. So what went through the players' heads when you first got word, and how do you maintain calm and stability and provide reassurance not knowing what next steps are in store?
Yeah, Kelly, it's an interesting question. I'm not sure exactly how to talk about what went through others' minds at that time. I'm happy to talk about, kind of what I was thinking, and that first and foremost, this is something that none of us have ever been through. And so, in that moment, we obviously have a team meeting and talk about, kind of what does this mean? And I think the most initial thoughts were, personal safety and family safety, and wanting to make sure that those that are closest to us were going to be safe. Not only were they safe in that moment, but that everybody was going to be okay. And we have a lot of players from other countries, and so that's even more challenging to think about returning back home and some of those logistical challenges that stateside we don't quite have. So clearly unsettling to go through that experience, which isn't probably uncommon from what our friends and families were feeling when this pandemic started.
At least similarly for you, what was your thought process when you first heard the news of the Olympic Games postponement to summer 2021?
Yeah, it's crazy. Like Brendan was saying, unprecedented times, not something anyone of us has ever been through or experienced. So I think that the process started with, we were racing, we got a few World Cups in this year, and then slowly once we got home in early February, and then we had one more race at the beginning of March, it seemed like slowly everything just started getting postponed or canceled, and the pandemic really started taking over. And it felt inevitable that we would get that news at some point as we saw everything start canceling, but and within about a 24-hour period, we were officially notified that our World Championships, which is meant to be in Houston this year, as well as the Olympic Games. Well, the World Championships, we still don't have a date, but we knew that it was postponed, canceled, TBD, as well as the Olympics were then moved instead of 4 months, we had 16 months to prepare. And as inevitable as it felt, hearing everyone's stories and obviously wanting the health and safety of everyone to be the top priority, you still had this feeling that they would make the Olympics happen. It's such a big event. But then we get the news. It was hard. It was hard to hear because you work in a 4-year cycle, and in the ninth hour, last hour here, 12th hour, you know, they changed it a whole another year, and that really can change things for people. So it was tough to hear, but I am happy that we were all able to, for the safety of everyone and all the athletes and the comfort and in fair sport, able to postpone and not cancel.
You're a two-time Olympian about to participate in your third games and veteran of the sport who's been training for Tokyo since the last games finished. Can you shed some light on what implications this pandemic has had on the training process for athletes like yourself?
Yeah, I think similarly to what I just said, Olympic athletes in particular um, work in these 4-year quadrennial cycles. And, from the minute I crossed the line in Rio with a silver, the aim was to how do we go one better in Tokyo? And so you gear your day to day around those little one percenters to be better, obviously at events throughout the years as well. But your eyes are set on that big event another 4 years later. And I think we were, as I said, in the 12th hour. This was the final prep for the Olympic Games, and you're peaking, you're getting ready to peak, and I think then when you have to change that, not only from the timeline standpoint of obviously switching from like 4 months to 16 months, when you've got to change up your training regimen accordingly, but it's had an effect on the day to day of a lot of people in the qualification process. There's a lot of limbo going on. I personally sit in a great position, but I'm still not guaranteed anything. I'm not technically qualified, as so many qualification races are put on hold and or to be determined if they will host them. There are so many moving parts that so many athletes are living in this uncertain world of, okay, are they taking a team that's already been selected, or are they going to resume and count things from next year, as we don't know when the races are going to resume. So I think it's tough, and it makes it hard to plan appropriately when you don't have the timeline in place. But now that we do have at least the Olympics dates in place, we can aim for that, but everything in between is a bit uncertain. And with the training centers closed down, it's definitely had an impact for all athletes, and obviously not just Olympic athletes, across all sports. You know, it's been a shame not to have sport on for everybody lately.
What advice would you have for someone who was in the middle of final preparations and is just looking for some way to continue their peak performance training with another year of prep ahead of them?
I think that people need to just remember the bigger picture, and although it does change things for people, it also doesn't in a way, because it just gives you another year to refine that process and that plan. You can't hold on for 16 months at the level you were at your peaking performance going into Olympics. You can't hold that same training regimen for that long. You need to probably reset, refocus, and put the plan back in place. And it's like going back in time. You get like a redo at what you've already prepared, so you can try to make that better. And I think going off of that and trusting in your process and making small goals day to day. We don't know when competition will resume, but we do know how we can be better than the day before, whatever you're allowed to do in your environment. So looking at yourself and the ways you can improve day to day, and ticking those little boxes. I mean, passion, purpose, that breeds progress over time. So I think you just have to focus on those little things, as we always do, but even more so now than ever.
Yeah, living in the moment is more important than ever before, and trying to make decisions as best you can in the moment, I suppose, is one way you can get through this. Similar question for you, Brandon. What advice would you give to the hundreds of professional baseball players who just started camp and now find themselves training alone in unfamiliar spaces and without their teammates and without their facilities and the same equipment that they're so used to?
Yeah, it's a good question. Elise said a few things that I think are similar to what our players are experiencing. The first would be that there is no timeline to our return. And with that makes it difficult to script out a training plan. And however, she also mentioned the idea of having a bigger picture, and this is a time to refine, a time for our guys to target some specific areas that they want to improve, and to set small goals, and really just to take it day by day. The other theme I would just mention is this idea that we're being nudged to be a bit more creative than we've been in the past. And I think about this as being a really healthy process, tempering to sort of the essential, what we need to do, what we don't need to do, and really getting creative with how we're going to continue to move towards our goal achievement.
How would you suggest the athletes stay fit and trained with the mid-season halt in competition? And how might they use this time to their advantage to come back even stronger and fitter than they were before?
Yeah, I think there are a few goals that you can set, in your training day to day. You can set specific set rep goal schemes. You can train for total minutes. You can set a list of exercises and just say, I'm going to go through this a few times. I think that those are all important. I also think it's important that we are just getting a little bit better every day. The one percenters that Elise mentioned, that we're nudging forward with our total volume, especially as we're feeling confident that a season will be here at some point. And so continue to move that needle forward, continue to get better, find small ways to improve. I know that you can go on social and really find a lot of ways to target the different movement patterns and movements that we do and we suggest for athletes. So I think just continue to move forward and to be creative at that point.
So, Brandon, without access to facilities and other things that athletes rely on for day-to-day workouts and training, what are a few essential workouts or activities that you would suggest professional athletes keep in their regimen right now?
Sure. I think answering this question has to do with obviously a lot of things here, but the idea that you push, pull, squat, hinge, lunge, and carry, and you can use those categories as guidance towards training. And that, I mean, shoot, if you're going to do some sort of carrying exercise, that might be a bag of charcoal in the backyard, that you're going to use on the grill that night, or just doing some squat movements in the backyard. And so I think if you can sort of categorize what types of movements that you're overall trying to add into your training, and then start to think about how can I be creative within those parameters with 2, 3, 4, 5 exercises that help move me towards that movement pattern, and then roll through what movement patterns that you think are important for your specific needs and the needs of your sport.
Yeah, getting creative and focusing on the essentials is certainly prudent for everyone. I'm going to direct this next question to Elise. As an elite athlete, you travel regularly during the competitive season. How has this affected your physical and mental preparation towards both training and future competitions?
Yeah, it's been wild being in one place for so long, actually. Never happens like this. And I don't want to say it's a good thing, but it's been a little bit of a refresh. It gets you itching to want to get back out there. Sometimes you can get all the travel and just being away from home, and I guess there's a routine, but lack thereof when you're on the road all the time. I think it can wear on you. So I think it's been a little bit of a refresh, a reset button, and I think for me personally has me excited for the chance when we do get to get out there and compete again. I thrive obviously in competition, and I love competing with myself and the hubby at home on little things, but there's nothing like the thrill of actual competition, and it gets me really excited thinking about the time when that can come again. And but for now, it's just focusing on. I had once the actual Olympics were pushed back and we had a date. Once I officially found that out, I took a little breather to reset on the training. Obviously, like I said, that had to be shifted and changed. Took a little reset button and then get going again. And really, it just comes back to focusing on the day to day. And like Brendan has touched on, you can really focus on things and be creative without having to necessarily. Well, for me, I can't, like, I think we're going to touch on this, but we can't go on the actual BMX track. So, you have to be creative, and I think it just gives you the opportunity to maybe do things that you didn't always focus on before, and getting better at those things each day of training, and then hopefully as things can be more specific moving forward, um, at that point hopefully that feeds into even better competition, and you've got an even more well-rounded base under your belt.
So, Elise, your sport is very unique in that it requires a very specific terrain. A BMX supercross track is not something that we all have in our backyard. So, with the track temporarily closed, you can't train on the very thing that you have to in order to stay on top of your sport. So, how have you adapted to that? And can you share some tips for in-home workouts that are geared towards the elite athlete that you have found beneficial?
Yeah, kind of touching on what I was just saying there. As an elite athlete, all aspects of the game are important. Like you said, physical, mental, tactical, all of that. You can still, outside of the physical side of things, you can still review video and learn from your competitors, yourself, previous races, look forward to the next thing. We are one of the lucky or fortunate sports that already had a test event for Tokyo. So I have that I can picture in my mind and keep me motivated moving forward as far as visualization and mentally preparing for that. And also knowing the fundamentals and essentials like Brendan talked about that we need to make sure are good for next year. So it gives us a chance to really focus on that. And for me at home, without having a track to ride, bikes are still a great thing that you can get out and ride in the street and keep your distance from people. So I have been able to get out and do sprinting on my bike, and whether if you're a road rider, you can get out and ride some distance and get some of that foundation under your belt as well. At home specifically, it depends what amount of equipment you had. I was fortunate that my husband and I had a feeling this was going to come about, and he loves to work out as well, and he rushed us to the store to get some home gym equipment before all of this, and yeah, so I've been able to do some of that stuff still at home with lifting basic exercises. Like Brendan was saying, you really have to focus on the essentials though and be creative with what you have. If you're able to get any sort of bands instead of, maybe if you don't have the weights, or vice versa, to create some resistance training, or you can do timed intervals of things. Like he was saying, even if you don't have any equipment, you need to do air squats and push-ups and all of that. Every bit of those fundamental exercises builds a foundation, and you need to have a strong core. You need to have a strong legs. Nothing works if every piece of the puzzle isn't operating right. So it's all important. And I think it just really gives us a chance to focus on the whole package and not necessarily have to stress on if I'm going to be wrecked when I get out on the track the next day. And because that's obviously a critical component when you're in competition season or are riding the track a lot, you need to make sure you're ready to go for those sessions. So it's a little bit different than our day-to-day normally, but I think it provides an opportunity for people to do some of the basics at home, even without equipment. Like I said, you can do circuits of ab stuff. There's a plethora of information on the internet that you can find stuff to do. And for me, luckily, I was able to get some gym equipment. I can still do some squats. We just did a charity event actually, and did some, I never do this, but did some bench press for time, for reps, for a charity thing, and had some fun with that. So yeah, we've adapted a little bit and had some fun with it.
Yeah, I'll share just one of my anxieties, and I'm sure the two of you can relate, is the fear of doing too little and the fear of doing too much. And I think we're all afraid of this being a time when we lose fitness and we might lose our edge, and we're trying to do everything we can to compensate. So that leads me into this next question, and I'll let you answer this, Elise. With the reality of the solo training, the new environment, uncertain future, the risk of over and under training are greatly increased. So how do you prevent yourself from getting physically fatigued or losing fitness all at the same time?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think I kind of touched on the fact that for my sport in particular, and I know Brendan could probably touch on this too for his athletes, but BMX racing and being on supercross tracks is extremely neurologically demanding, and you need to be firing on all cylinders just to make sure you're minimizing risk of injury while you're out there. And so I think that we always monitor our fatigue levels, whether that be at home. You can jump up, use a piece of chalk, see how high you can jump each day, and monitor if you're able to be within 5% of that. Something that can test where you're at, because if your body's tired, it's going to tell you, and you need to be able to listen to it. And at the same time, under training, I don't think there's an excuse to be under training either. I think, like Brendan said, we just need to be creative of what we can do, and it just might look a little bit different. But your body's going to tell you when it's tired, and if you can have some sort of measure that lets you know, I can usually jump 20 inches or whatever it may be, and you can only jump 15 inches that day. Maybe you need to scale back what you're doing, or you're a bit tired, or maybe it's going great and you keep improving, and you listen to that, and you're on the right track. So that's just one example, but I think I think just having some sort of marker for yourself, and listening to the motivation as well. As much as we hate to admit it, it is a pandemic, and it has affected everyone. And you probably are gonna feel a little bit of sense of, being stuck at home and just, wanting to get out a bit, or just feeling a little bit extra tired because you're stuck in the same four walls a bit more than usual. So I think taking on things that keep your mind busy, and having those little goals, each day, even if they're small, is better than nothing, and you won't be under training.
Yeah, and the measure of fatigue and overtraining is different, I suppose, for every athlete. And for me, it's just, listening to my body and fatigue levels, and resting heart rate is another thing I look at.
Yeah, yeah, that's great. Yeah.
Yeah. So the next question, while focusing on physical fitness and all the stress that comes with the unknown, and this is for you, Elise, any advice to avoid mental fatigue?
Like I said, I definitely needed to hit a reset button with all of this, just because the actual training needed to change as well, as it was at a different phase of that training. But just to soak it all up. We pour our heart and souls into our fitness and sport and athletes. We love what we do and we're passionate about it. And it's a lifestyle. It's not just a job. And I think it wears on you, the stress of the unknown, and I guess just the major changes that have happened. So acknowledging that, giving yourself time to absorb that. Um, it needs to be addressed. I don't think just pretending it didn't happen is a good thing. I think you need to address it. But then, like I have said repeatedly, is you need to set goals, and find ways, or what do you feel is the essentials of what you need to do to be better at the end of, whether this is 3 months or 6 months or however long you're stuck at home. What things can you do to improve the key foundational movements, or your mental game for when you do line back up in the gate? What things are going to help that? And tick those boxes, set a schedule for the week. And if you're extremely unmotivated one day, yes, that's going to happen. But if that lingers and it's a repeated thing, something needs to change. You need to listen to your body. And I think making sure you do things that keep your mind busy and active. I've done just home projects and things that, keep me, I guess, motivated. I like to see the before and after and the result of something. So that keeps me going, outside of training hours. But that's different for everybody. I think some sort of outlet is good.
Yeah, so listening to your mental state and paying attention to any signs of decreased motivation, or any kind of decline in your focus, I suppose deserves special attention and reflection. And this is a great time to reflect on things, of course, what's working, what's not. I'm going to switch to you, Brendan. From your experience, what are professional players finding easiest to adapt to during this time? And how is their mental state? And how are you supporting them to stay positive and motivated?
Sure. Well, I think, we've been away from, just to rewind, we were almost through with spring training. I mean, we're within 1 week of spring training, a few weeks within spring training breaking, and us getting to the season. And and then this happens, and now we're almost 5 weeks since that time. And so in a way, I feel that it's being treated a little bit like an off-season feeling, with the idea that we have more flexibility with our time. However, what I would say, with more time and more flexibility should come a little bit more focus on specific things. And I think that helps, really, to have something to focus on, and rather than be distracted by. That keeps us positive and motivated. And we are really lucky that we live in the time that we do, because of the connection we have with our devices and our technology as well. I know that things like Zoom calls and FaceTiming, video chatting through WhatsApp, those have all become more accepted than they have been. And I think that we're all utilizing those technologies a bit more to do the best we can at staying connected to people. And I think I think that's helpful, although not real connection with people in person. But I think coming out of the other side, I think that these types of technologies will help us more for this coming off season. Once, looking at this optimistically, we're going to have a season, and on the other end of it, when it's the off season, I know that that'll move us forward in terms of remaining connected and helping our guys, achieve the goals that they set.
So building off that question, solo training can take its toll on physical and mental well-being. What areas are you finding to be the most challenging for professional athletes in this space? And what are your recommendations to other coaches who may be dealing with the same issues?
I would say that probably variety is a large challenge. Elise is fortunate; she's went out and got some equipment for the house, and that's what I think a lot of people have done, and that's excellent. I did mention early on that we do have athletes in other countries, and those conditions vary based on country, but some of those countries don't have the ability to get to this type of equipment, and sometimes connection with technology is poor. So continue to stay, to stay focused on adding the variety, and maybe searching out new ideas that can get stale. Recommendations like isometric training might be appropriate once you kind of get bored with the traditional, if you will, running and lifting programs. Um, and I think that those are some ideas that might be helpful for others.
We're going to go into our next segment on nutrition. So I'm going to direct this first question to you, Elise. What is diet normally like for you in a consistent, familiar environment versus now? And have you seen any noticeable changes, good or bad?
Well, I have been cooking a lot more in this time. So I would say that given the extra time we've had, and fortunately pretty good availability on most food at the stores when I've had to brave the storm and get our essentials. Um, we've been eating pretty well diet wise. I don't follow a specific like paleo or gluten free or any specific diet in that realm. I'm pretty big believer in all things in proportion, all things in moderation, and I think that hasn't really changed too much for me. I would say I'm probably almost eating better at this time because it's one of those things that you can focus on right now and have the time to really look at. And I think with the added, obviously, with all of my clean stuff, I'm able to luckily get access to all of that and maintain like all my immune system healthy and strong. That's stuff that I am always focused on with all the travel we're normally doing, but now kind of staying in one place and having a stationary day to day. I think my health is actually doing awesome, and my diet's going well.
That's good to hear. I might ask you for some cooking tips. It's one of my biggest challenges.
Well, my number one is that we got a Traeger right before the smoker, right before all this, and there's nothing you can't do. I'm loving it, and it's fun to experiment. It passes the time. So there's my tip. Get a smoker. It takes
Yeah,
time.
that's great advice. So what have you found at least to be most beneficial nutritionally? Is it a certain thing that you eat? Is it a certain dietary pattern? Is it a supplement? What would you say be the single most beneficial thing you have done with your diet?
I think for me, just smoothies in general, having smoothies is important for me to get the amount of calories, whether it's for protein or to get some fruits and veggies in through the day. Like I can't eat enough, I feel like, to maintain size and fitness for what we do. And I think that being able to have a little bit of a liquid diet in that sense or additives has been awesome, and being able to get enough protein in the day. And I've grown over the years, but I grew up on not the best diet, full Midwest blood here on the diet. And over the years, obviously, of training and focusing on that stuff, I've improved. But I'm not the best with making sure I get all my fruits and veggies in. So being able to just blend them up and drink them has been an amazing additive. So I think if there's anything you can do, get creative with your shakes and smoothies, and add this supplementation you need in, and that's a great way to get calories in.
Yeah, and I can certainly relate. There's nothing better to look forward to after a really hard workout than a smoothie. So I hear you.
They're so
Definitely a
good.
skill you want to master.
Yeah.
So I'm going to switch gears to you, Brendan. In a normal environment, coaches have a great deal of oversight over their players' diet and nutrition choices and how they fuel themselves. So with the forced changes to isolation, do you have any recommendations on how coaches can continue supporting the nutritional needs of their athletes?
Yeah, so with the Pirates, we're really lucky. We have our director of sports nutrition and fueling, Allison Maurer, and the nutrition department, along with our chefs and our athlete development team. We take this as a group approach to sending out education and messaging. And so we take this as a team and look at a food first approach, and then along with NSF for sport certified products to support that food first approach. And we're fortunate to have companies that support us like Clean in that process. And so, assuming that we've got good food choices around us, we go there and then continue to have, Allison has specific nutritional discussions with our guys to get them first the education they need, and then obviously anything that follows from there.
So Brendan, what do you see in your experience as the biggest challenge for the pro athletes right now with regard to nutrition? And how might they learn from this experience to improve their diet when the season picks back up again?
Yeah, I mean, Elise mentioned, having to cook a bit more. I think this is like a really good time to force ourselves into, I guess, that responsibility. And early on, I just mentioned that there were going to be some positive things that come out of this negative event, and I'm really hopeful that that this is one of them. I know that Allison does cooking videos and sends those to our guys as different tips, and is really a way to educate first, right? And then to help them support their healthy lifestyle. And we're none of us are perfect. I think it's just about being a little bit better than you were all of the time.
Yeah. Elise, I'm going to send this last question, our food segment, to you. Nutrition plays an important role in health of athletes, obviously, overall health. What is one of your favorite go-to recipes? You mentioned smoothies. Do you have a recipe that you really look forward to that helps you stay strong and competition ready?
Well, I do love I use some of the vanilla isolate, and then I blend that up with a banana, some almonds and almond milk. Throw some blueberries or strawberries in there if you want, spinach, chia seeds, and a bit of yogurt, and blend that baby up, and that's pretty good. So, oh, an
Sounds
apple
awesome.
in there as well. Yeah. So that's an exciting one. I look forward to that one pretty regularly.
Very good. So we're going to go into a pro perspective segment here, and we're going to start this off with a question for Brendan. The first step towards helping others, obviously, is to take care of yourself. So I imagine caring for every individual athlete on the team takes a lot of time and energy. Have you found any practices that help you stay focused on self-care?
Well, that's a good question. I think I'm lucky that it's sort of in my blood to be active. I am fortunate that I love to be outside, that I love to be moving. I love the sunshine. I love everything about being outside and being active. So I would just say that that really helps me, encourages me to stay fit and to get outside. I think I've also been pushed to adjust my training. I'm spending less time really thinking about the details of my training and more time just trying to accumulate minutes of training, knowing that some of those will be a little bit better quality than others. There are other lifestyle adjustments that I've made. I'm spending a lot more time on my phone, on my device, and I'm currently in the South, and so the weather here is nice, and I'm trying to spend more time taking those calls out walking or at least being outside rather than sitting. So for me, it's just trying to take advantage of maybe some lower intensity minutes, and hopefully that's adding to health long term.
I'm sure you get a lot of questions from players. What's your favorite question? And we promise not to ask it. What's your least favorite question?
Well, I probably could just say that the most common question is, when is the season going to begin? And the answer to that is, I don't know. So that would be the most obvious question that we're getting. I should say I'm getting, and we're just looking forward to getting back to baseball in some regularity. Um, in terms of a least favorite question that you're receiving, that's tough to say. I think continuing to always come up with creative ideas can be difficult, and I mean that in context of new exercises or new movements within whatever criteria that we're operating from. And so I think when that happens, that's why it's important to have a really good team of people around our athletes, like we do with the Pirates. And so I tend to lean on our director of sports medicine, Todd Tomzik, or even AJ Patrick, who's our senior coordinator of rehab and athlete development. So between those two guys and Allison, just kind of trying to work together to answer any of those questions that become difficult.
I'm sure a lot of concerns float through your head every day. What is your biggest concern when it comes to the health of professional athletes? It could be physical, mental, or both. What would you think is your biggest concern?
Well, I don't know that I have any concerns. I just would like to just, make sure if we were in control, full in control of just making sure that number one is, everyone's healthy mentally in terms of, mental health. I think that's critical in this time with a lot of the new challenges. In terms of physical, just ensuring that we're prepared for a season when it does happen. You can't really, and I think I would imagine Elise is going through this as well, you can't really prepare for the sport other than just doing the sport. And it's really the best way to train for that. We're in the time that we live, we've got great technology, really good ideas, and we can hedge some of that gap. However, we can't eliminate that gap. And so we're trying to be creative with how we can increase our intensity and help our guys, get closer to being able to tolerate that when we do return.
So maintaining continuity in training intensity and training patterns as best you can would certainly be the best
Yeah,
way to overcome that.
certainly.
Elise, this question I'm going to give to you. Being social with both teammates and competitors is key to any sport, especially yours, which is largely individual. Do you have any tips for athletes who may be missing that frequent interaction with their teammates or friendly competitors? And how are you staying connected?
Yeah, as Brendan kind of touched on it a little bit, I think that um, I can see how being in a team sport right now would be very difficult, not being able to, I guess, do the sport and work on that strategy together. And a lot of team bonding that happens. And so in that regard, being in an individual sport, not that much has changed on that physical front, but yeah, mentally and obviously getting out there and having some friendly competition always makes your day to day better. And obviously they are your friends. It's like a traveling circus when you're on the elite level of any sport. Everybody knows everybody. And I think that, yeah, it's tough for everybody, but that's not just athletes, the whole world is missing that connection right now. And doing your Zoom calls or playing. We've had game nights on the computer virtually with everybody. We've done just phone calls and everything we can, making sure you call everybody if it's their birthday and take a little. Sometimes, not to say everyone gets too busy, but maybe you don't call grandma and grandpa enough either, or whatever it may be. And now take the time to do those things and make sure those connections are good. And I think it's going to make it all the more fun when you do get back out onto, whatever your normal playing field may be, and keeps you in touch. I think that the game nights are a good way to keep a little bit of friendly competition up and have fun with your fellow athletes as well and teammates.
Yeah, I'm a big believer in social connection being a fundamental nutrient, if you will, and now we're kind of going without a lot of it. But like you said, it doesn't take much, just a phone call or a quick text or just something to stay in touch, and it's amazing how much better you feel. Similar question for you, Brendan. Connection and camaraderie are everything in the sport of baseball. So, as a coach, how are you continuing to foster that while players are training all by themselves, far apart from one another?
Yeah, you're right. Baseball is really known for quite a bit of connection and camaraderie with the team, and our sport demands so many games per year. Over a 6 or 8 month period, depending if you include spring training or not in there. And so, our guys are really used to being around and enjoying each other's company. And I think, like I mentioned a bit earlier, I'm hopeful that we're certainly utilizing technology to shorten that space, although not eliminating it, and that when we return, it'll make those relationships even stronger.
A couple minutes we have left. I'm going to ask this final question. We have two questions actually. This one is for Elise. So now that you're not on the track every day, what are some of the hidden or unexpected benefits that you've experienced with this temporary change? Do you have any recommendations for others trying to help make the most of these times?
I really think we've covered a lot of what this is. There's unexpected benefits in the fact that you can focus on those things that maybe get maybe a little 1%er that gets pushed to the side in your training, because you got to focus on the big 60%er. And I think you can be better at all those little things, and that all adds up and into those marginal gains. So that, like we talked about diet, the cooking, being just creating that routine. And it has been in an odd way nice to be home and stationary, and you can really have a good training block without, having the stress of, well, I need to peak for this event, but I also need to be ready for this event. We race a lot. And I think that, being able to just focus on one task at a time is a good thing. And I think that people need to think of those things as a positive and embrace that and know that there will be a time when it returns. But for now, just getting creative and getting on your bikes. I've really enjoyed when I've been out walking the dog and just seeing all, like, in the neighborhood, so many families that are isolated or quarantining together. They're out in their driveways riding bikes and stuff and all that again. I just hope that people carry that into their day to day when we move forward. Seeing that time people are spending with each other and out on bikes has been great. So yeah, I hope that people can continue some of that lifestyle as we move forward and remember those important essentials that maybe get overlooked.
Yeah, I'll agree that you can look at this as a very positive thing and an opportunity to discover a lot about what's best as far as workout timing. Um, the type of workouts that you do might change, but they might be better in certain ways. You might experience some performance benefits from them. I'm certainly appreciating the outdoors more, and I have more, more availability to be outside. Um, and being creative, like Brendan mentioned, just being really creative with your training. I went out to my barn and built a squat rack because I just hate squats, and I thought, well, this is a good time to work on my squat. Why not? So I could certainly share that positive spin on things. In the time we have left, I'm going to send this last question to Brendan. Same question for you. So now that you're not spending full days at the training facility, what are some of the benefits that you see having more time to focus on family and focus on yourself? And what are some positive outcomes of this temporary change?
I think one of the things I've really enjoyed is it seems to me that people are sharing more information between videos or conferences, and really looking at that as a chance to learn together. So I'm enjoying doing that and spending time learning about maybe some areas that I wouldn't have seeked out on my own, and then using that as an opportunity to go back to the few people that were on the same chain or whatever, and really kind of walk through and discuss what would be, the takeaways from that specific education, and then how might we best, apply that to improving player health and performance. So if I had to choose one, I think that's probably where I would go in terms of, really enjoying more time to learn.
Yeah, great. Are there any final tips from either of you? Any advice or information to share with coaches or athletes to help them make the most of this time and optimizing their health?
Um, I guess just as we've been going about, and it's just embrace that uncertainty. I think athletes and anyone involved in sport, I mean, we constantly live in a world of uncertainty. You're never guaranteed any results or anything. You just do the best with what the information you have and try to make the most of it. And it's fun to try to win. And I think that that's always an uncertain thing. And I think we just need to embrace that and realize it's not necessarily changed everything. It's just made us look at things a little differently.
Yeah, I would just agree with that point. Just try to, find some silver lining and do the best you can with your circumstances to begin, moving in a really positive direction, and that we'll all come out of this all right.
Yes, we will. We will certainly come out of this all right, and competitions will resume and things will be back to normal at some point. So thank you for both of your insights. That concludes today's conversation. I'd like to thank all of you for tuning in, and we hope you came away from this discussion with some helpful information to help you prioritize your health, your well-being, your performance during this uncertain time. I invite you to send us any additional questions or comments via email at info@cleanathlete.com. And while we may be training alone, we're all in this together. And as always, at Clean Athlete, we're committed to supporting you, your family, your coaches, teammates, and everyone involved with reliable information. So on behalf of Clean Athlete, I wish you health, safety, and peace of mind as you continue to pursue your goals and dreams. Thank you so much, Brendan and Elise. I wish you well.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you.